Okay, well, welcome to anyone who's joining us this evening. We're just going to wait a few minutes so that participants can get online. It is a beautiful evening in upstate New York, so thanks for attending and spending your time with us this evening, learning about the Village of Brockport's clean energy program. So in just a few minutes, we'll get started. We still see people joining. I will be surprised if Zoom is new to too many people, but just in case, we have some hints for you. If you use a speaker view, you can see the program full screen. Your microphone and your camera will be off during the presentation, but you can ask questions, and it's actually called the Q&A feature. So if you hover your cursor, usually at the top or bottom of the screen, a menu will kind of pop up and you should see Q&A. You can usually click that and then type in a question. And a couple of my colleagues will work on answering some of those questions as we go along and select ones that would be great for everyone to hear for us to discuss at the end of the presentation. Okay, looks like we have stopped gaining people. So thank you everyone for joining us for this evening's presentation. For clean energy choices in the Village of Brockport. My name is Sue Hughes-Smith, and I am one of the partners at Rocktricity. The other partners are Margie Pete, Ben Freevert, and Melissa Carlson, and we have two new staff people, Shannon Bellamy and Sienna Prieto. So if you call the office, you will get a hold of one of us. Our offices are on South Avenue in Rochester, so we're right here local with you. And this program has really been led by the Village of Brockport, and they selected an administrator, which is Jewel Community Power, and we're the subcontractor. We at Rocktricity are the subcontractor to Jewel Community Power, and we're the local program managers. So before I get any further into the details, I'd like to introduce you to your mayor, Mayor Blackman, to say a few words. Yep, I think you're muted.
I am indeed muted. I'm now not muted. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this presentation. And hopefully you'll learn a little bit more about what has been outlined to you in a pretty detailed letter that has gone to every resident and business in the Village of Brockport. And I learned a few things from this too, and have a few things to report later on in terms of energy rates and so forth. So,
great, thank you. All right, well, without further ado, the Village of Brockport, as you know, is launching a community choice aggregation program, which is often abbreviated CCA. And the village has selected a 100% New York State renewable electricity supply and community choice solar program. And it will launch in September of 2021. So just in a couple months. You did receive a letter, hopefully it looked much like this, right? With the village seal at the top. And your letter may not have been the same as your neighbor's letter because you received a letter that described your eligibility. So some folks are eligible for both programs while other people are only eligible for one program. And we'll get to the details of that in just a second. But all eligible participants have received a letter from the Village of Brockport. I will briefly touch on these topics, explain what community choice aggregation is and the benefits, and then I'll get into the details of your program, the supply pricing, and at that point we'll have Mayor Blackman chime back in, and then I'll get into the community choice solar portion, and then we'll look at this question of eligibility, take a look at your utility bill and think about how that might change if you choose to participate. And then describe how to exit the program if you decide that this just isn't something that you would like to do, and the next steps to watch for. So community choice aggregation is kind of a clunky term, but it is what the state of New York has implemented in April of 2016. So New York State is about the 7th state in the country to offer this type of a program. The rules vary by state, so you don't want to look up what's happening in, Illinois or California and assume that's what's happening here. Our rules are unique to our regulatory system. And New York State had a pilot program in Westchester County in 2015. They took that learning and they developed the rules and regulations around community choice aggregation for our state. And what this does is it allows municipalities to aggregate energy demand and then negotiate a bulk purchase price. And because of that, the Public Service Commission has structured the program as an opt-out program, meaning all of the community is in unless they choose not to participate. Okay, so it's impossible to negotiate a bulk purchase if you don't have a bulk of participants. So when we go to bid, the energy companies are able to look at kind of the experience across the state. They understand what percentage of the public is likely to participate. And then through a competitive process, they offer their best price. And so that's what's happened. That's why it's structured as an opt-out program. Okay, and the program in Brockport has 2 components: the community choice electricity supply, and that is simply moving the automatic or default energy choice from the state telling National Grid to purchase energy on your behalf to the municipality selecting offers, looking at offers and choosing the best available to meet their goals for your community. Okay, and the supply impacts the per kilowatt rate for the electrons themselves. We'll look more closely at that in just a second. The second piece of the program is community choice solar. And this program instructs the National Grid, in this case, to purchase electricity that's being generated from solar farms for the amount that you are typically consuming. And in return, the customer receives guaranteed savings in the form of bill credits and for supporting renewable generation. So this helps support local solar development. It helps bring new renewable generation onto the grid. So you have options. You can participate in just the supply program if you're eligible. Or if you're eligible, you can just participate in the solar program. You could, if you're eligible, participate in both or neither. So you really, this is just more opportunities for you to decide how you would like to support the energy industry in our state and in our communities. So the benefits of community choice aggregation include leveraging that bulk buying strategy through aggregation. And then another is that it allows the municipality to select a variety of energy offerings. This is just a tool, and the Village of Brockport has started this process with 2 possible offerings for you. Maybe there will be other opportunities in the future. And then thirdly, we hope that this will help accelerate the transition to renewable energy. New York State has some very bold goals, and this is one tool that the state hopes municipalities can use to do their part in this, creating this transition. Okay. And then the last piece really is that community choice aggregation in terms of the supply price is a fixed price. So meaning it would be the same for 2 years in this case, Whereas when National Grid purchases electricity on our behalf, they have to pass through the market price to the consumer. And so the price can go up and down from month to month to month. So again, the benefits, there are consumer protections. So as I mentioned, the village selected Jewel Community Power as the New York State approved CCA administrator. And Jewel basically serves as a consultant for the municipality. They negotiate the terms and conditions of the contracts. Another feature is that all of these opportunities are going to still result in just your one bill, just the same utility bill you always got from National Grid, no additional bills. All the information will be just right there in your National Grid bill. In addition, for the community solar program, Jewel also creates a giving back program, and that can be used by the village to help fund other local sustainability initiatives. And this, because the state of New York wants municipalities to offer renewable CCA programs and community solar programs, they contribute to the accumulation of points in a different state program called the Clean Energy Communities. And that can unlock additional grant funding for the village to pursue more sustainability initiatives. Finally, for each of the particular offerings, Community Choice Electric Supply allows you as the consumer to access more affordably priced New York State renewably generated electricity. If you tried to get that product as an individual, you would pay 15% or more than what the aggregated price that we were able to access. I already mentioned the reduced price volatility through fixed rate contracts. And then in the Community Choice Solar Program, this is really a fantastic opportunity because it is guaranteed savings through the supporting of local solar projects. So it really just seems like a universal win on the community solar. So here we are with the details of the supply part of the bill. Remember, this is for those electrons. The Jewel had a competitive process. They went out to the marketplace and they asked energy companies to respond. And the company with the best offer was Constellation New Energy. The contract is for 24 months, beginning in September. And you have an option as a resident or as a small business. You can stay with the default, which is supporting New York State renewable generation, or you could opt down to kind of the standard mix. And that by standard mix, we mean the electrons are being generated by fossil fuels, by nuclear power, and by a little bit of renewables. So those are your options. And the rates are, as you can see, 5.9 cents per kilowatt hour for renewable and 4.96 cents per kilowatt hour for the standard rate, slightly higher if you're a small business. And I know Mayor Blackman wanted to chime in at this point.
Okay, thanks, Sue. One of the things that I know that a lot of people have expressed concern, bewilderment about these rates, and particularly the rates as compared with the figures that you gave, which were the rates, the National Grid rates from, it was from April of 2020 to March of 2021. And those rates were considerably lower than the rates that are being offered through Constellation New Energy. So I decided to go back and to look at my own National Grid bills because I get my supply from National Grid. And one of the things, I also am on the budget, the National Grid budget program. So I pay the same amount every month. And in May of 2021, my National Grid budget plan bill went from $82 a month to $95 a month. And my immediate thought was, I must be using more electricity. I didn't pay any attention to it. I didn't pay any attention to what the rate was. But after receiving this, I went back and looked at the national grid rates, which changed in April of 2021. So it changed after the figures that you quoted for that 12-month period. And the change was fairly substantial. The current national grid energy supply rate is 0.05516. So quite a bit higher. I was astounded. I had no idea. And that was quite a bit more than the 12-month average that was reported from March of 2020 to April of 2021, or April of 2020 to March of 2021, which was 0.04171. So even the current national grid rate is higher than what the standard fixed price rate will be with Constellation. And it's not actually that much lower than the standard renewable rate, which is 0.05912. So that was good to know. Definitely, electric rates have gone up, and they may be continued to head up. I will also say that the village has had its municipal electric supply for almost 2 years now from Constellation as well. And we carefully chose them because they seem to be a very reliable source. And we have been paying 0.04730, and our contract expires in October. So this was very helpful to me to see these comparisons. So I think that what we're being offered for Constellation New Energy is a really very good deal.
Thank you so much, Mayor, for looking at your bill and giving us some context. And I'm sure if folks think about that year and everything that happened in that year, right? We're in a pandemic, energy use was down across the country, even though we as individuals might have been using more. We were not manufacturing, we're not doing a lot of things. Energy use was down, and that brought electricity rates down to historic lows. And what we're seeing now is the economy is recovering as rates across the board are rising again, kind of normalizing. So excellent context, and we do feel really great about these rates that are being offered to the community. Okay. So the community solar program, this is, remember, is a guaranteed savings for the consumer. And what happens is if you participate, you will receive credits on your national grid bill. You would be subscribed to one of 6 possible solar fields, more on that in a second. And these solar credits are offered at a 10% discount. So the goal is for people to save about 10% off the total electricity cost, both delivery and supply, that you have annually. It would vary month to month with the productivity of the solar fields themselves being kind of seasonal, but the goal is by the end of the year that you had seen about a 10% savings. Already mentioned that Jewel also creates a giving back program, and that can be used to help with sustainability projects that the village chooses. And more details on this will come in a letter. So those who participate will receive an additional letter later this fall telling you which field you've been subscribed to and when to expect to see those credits or that savings appear on your national grid bill. And this is why. So the solar's been contracted through actually 6 different fields. These are the names of the solar projects, and the next column is where the projects are located, the owner of those projects, the size in terms of kilowatt hours per year, and then the estimated date when the solar credits will begin to reach customers. Okay, so it takes time for these solar fields to get built. Then they have to wait for National Grid to interconnect that field with the grid. And the current projections, the earliest would be September 30th, then another in October, another November, and then the other 3 fields to be connected in February. So those are the estimates. If you participate, you'll get an additional letter telling you which field you're subscribed to and when these solar credits would begin. And these solar credits would be yours to make use of really for years and years. These are long-term contracts. Okay, so will this program affect you? 2 key things. You have to live in the village of Brockport in order to participate. And you have to have not placed a block on your utility account. So if at any point you had told National Grid to just block your account, you didn't want any more like advertising or whatever, and you want to participate, then you would need to tell National Grid to remove that block. Okay, but otherwise, eligibility could be determined for each program differently. Okay, so if you want to participate in that fixed per kilowatt rate for the electrons, then you need to have National Grid currently purchasing your electricity. So they would be listed as the supplier on your bill. If you already have chosen your own energy supply company, then you are not automatically included in this program. And then the other thing that unfortunately prevents participation is if you've received assistance through a utility program like HEAP. The rules of HEAP prevent the HEAP participants from participating in this CCA supply program. However, those folks could participate in the solar program, which is great. The only things that prevent you from participating in the solar is if you have rooftop solar or some other on-site solar system, or if you are already participating in some other community solar field. Okay, so otherwise, everyone else should be eligible. So again, you may have gotten a letter that told you you were eligible for community solar. You might have gotten a letter saying you're eligible for the community choice supply. And most of you got a letter saying you could participate in both programs. But ultimately, the choice is up to you of whether you would like to have this opportunity to support renewable energy and to help New York State meet our climate goals. So you can participate in one, both, or neither program, depending on your eligibility. So let's assume for a second that you decide to participate and you're curious about, well, what does this do to your utility bill? Well, how will it look different? And so here's a mock-up of a National Grid bill. First thing I want you to understand is your National Grid bill for electricity includes both delivery services and supply services. So what's that all about? The delivery services are the charges that National Grid is allowed to put on the bill to cover National Grid's costs and profit. And that is typically about 2/3 of your electricity cost. Okay, so National Grid is still going to be your utility, your delivery utility. They will still do all the jobs they already do. They'll maintain the wires, they'll send your bill, they'll call them if there's an outage. And so the delivery services are not impacted by this program, and the delivery costs are not impacted by this program. What CCA supply impacts is simply the supply services, the cost of the electrons themselves. And as we already noted, National Grid's rates go up and down each month. And if you were trying to look at those past bills and compare them, you would actually need to not just include the per kilowatt hour rate, but also these other charges like the merchant function charge. The CCA rate is an all-in rate. So you'll just see the 5.9 cents per kilowatt hour if you are a residential customer in the renewable energy program. Okay, so that's the details for electric supply. And then, well, what if you participate in the solar program? In that case, you will see in the section called Other Charges and Adjustments, a very kind of confusing term listed as transfer credit / charge. And that is going to be the community solar credit. And that'll be a negative value, of course, because it's a savings. So it's a subtraction. And that will be used to offset both your supply and delivery charges. Target, again, is about a 10% savings over your annual electricity costs. Okay. So if you don't want to participate, what do you do? Well, in that letter that came in the mail, there is an opt-out card and an envelope, an address stamped envelope. You can simply sign the card, put it in the envelope, and put it in the mail. We will receive that information and then remove you from the opportunity. If you want to call us, that is totally fine. We are happy to process your request over the phone. You can call us at 585-244-0244. Or you can do it yourself by going to the website, fingerlakescommunitychoice.com, and then you need to select the enrollment change form. No matter which you do, whether you use the website or whether you call us, it is really very helpful if you have this pre-enrollment ID number. Okay, so all of the cards, regardless of whether you're just eligible for supply, your card will look somewhat like this. If you're just eligible for solar, again, your card looks like this. Or if you're eligible for both, there's a pre-enrollment ID in the upper right-hand corner, and that just really helps facilitate the process if you can read that number to us, okay? So if you're eligible for both, and let's say you want to do the solar because that's a guaranteed savings, but you don't want to do the renewable electricity, then you would just only check the box for the one you do not want to participate in. So you would check the renewable supply, leave the solar blank, send in the card, or vice versa. Or if you don't want either, just check both boxes and stick this in the mail. Okay, it's really up to you. Hopefully that makes sense to people. If it doesn't make sense, please give us a call. We're happy to walk you through it and answer any questions that you have. If, I should emphasize, if you want that standard mix as opposed to renewable mix, we can do that also through the enrollment change form, or you can call us, but you can't do that on this card. They thought, the people thought that would be just too confusing. Okay, so the next steps are you've received the welcome opt-out letters, and the initial opt-out period runs through August 14th. Okay, so you can always choose to leave the program at any time with no fee, no penalty. But if you just never want to even start the program, we really need to receive your information by August 14th. The program rate for supply will begin on your first meter read after September 1st. So some of us get our meter read on September 1st, some on the 20th, some on the 30th of September. Whatever date your meter gets read, that's when the new CCA rate will begin for you. And so in October, your October bill, you would begin to see Constellation New Energy listed as the supplier. And then, of course, if you're participating in the solar program, depending which field you get assigned to, you'll begin to see that solar savings either in September or October, November, or in the following February. And you'll receive an additional letter reminding you or telling you which field you've been subscribed to. So that's the Finger Lakes Community Choice Program as available in the Village of Brockport. And you can contact our team at Rocktricity at 244-0244, the 585 area code. And you can also email us. It's a little bit long, info@fingerlakescommunitychoice.com. But you can reach us easily either way. Okay, so what questions do you all have?
There's a couple of good questions coming in here, Sue. The first one is, do we have any numbers on how many residents and businesses have opted out?
That's an interesting question. So maybe Shannon has looked at our spreadsheet most recently. Yeah.
Yeah, so we have currently processed 8 opt-outs so far for Brockport.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And then another question. I have senior neighbors that are confused and overwhelmed by this process. Has anyone considered how it is perceived that everyone is opted in unless they opt out? I think we've received this, we've had this question before in other programs about why is it opt out instead of opt in?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the #1 concern that people share with us. And unfortunately, it's kind of outside our ability to control. The Public Service Commission has structured these programs as opt-out programs. Much like if you didn't want National Grid to be your supplier, you have to opt out of them as well, right? So that's just how the regulations have been created. I could tell you that I had a lovely conversation with one older person from the Village of Brockport who called and said she was overwhelmed and just didn't want to participate. Happy to help. It's really very easy to facilitate that if people find it just too overwhelming. But yeah, so it has been considered. We've done the best to deliver a letter that folks can understand, and we are here available for the community to call and ask us questions, and happy to spend as much time as anyone needs so that they have the information they need to make the decision that's best for themselves.
Okay, one more really good question. If we opt out, can we later sign up?
Hey, great question. Thank you for that. And the answer is yes, you can. We would welcome you doing that. And
yeah, and you can opt back in and opt out again as many times as you'd like, and there's no fee or penalty associated with doing that.
Right. Thanks, Ben.
So that looks like all of the questions we have at the moment.
Okay. Anything coming in from Facebook that we know of?
No, there's no comments on Facebook.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much to those of you who have joined us this evening. Really appreciate you getting the information, and hope you'll let other folks in the community know. This is being recorded. It'll be available on the Facebook page. We will also post it on our YouTube channel, Rocktricity's YouTube channel. And so if you know people who would like to watch the presentation, it is available for them. Oh, one more question.
So this question says, people I have spoken with and myself discarded the mailing as it looked like unsolicited junk mail. I think the reason only 8 have opted out is because they don't know about it. This does not seem to be a fair reaction to the community's questions. You know, I might add a comment about that. And it is that when the state of New York implemented this program, they looked at what was happening in other states. And they looked at the fact that some states implemented an opt-in arrangement and some implemented an opt-out arrangement. And with the opt-in programs, they had very low participation. it was on the order of 8 to 10% of people opted in. And on opt-out programs, it was similarly very low. I think it was slightly higher. But the conclusion from that was that most people don't actually care very much about this. And the real goal of the state's efforts here are to get those people who aren't particularly concerned about their electric bill to be using renewably generated electricity. And we at Rocktricity think that that's really important.
Yeah, I think we might. Mm-hmm. I think we might also want to mention that the 8 people that we've counted are people who have called us. It doesn't count people who have mailed in their opt-out cards.
Thank you, Margie. That's absolutely true. We won't have that information until later in the month. And that's, also why the letter is sent on village letterhead with the mayor's signature, is to distinguish it from junk mail. And, we all may have different opinions on what constitutes junk mail. I know I'm responsible for reading my mail, and I suspect everybody in the community can similarly be responsible to read their mail. So, okay. Anything else?
Well, there are no more questions.
Mm-hmm. So there are a couple questions.
There's one additional comment there.
Yeah.
Which I think you see.
Yeah. And I don't know if I want to address it or not, but I guess I'll share a personal story, just briefly, for this, folks. And I'm sure your concern is genuine, as is ours. Nobody is interested in forcing anybody to participate. We all have the ability to choose to read our mail or not, and to ask questions and get the information that we need. My grandpa dropped out of school in the 8th grade because his dad died. And at that time, there was no food stamps or other programs. So he had to work so that his siblings could eat. But he always read his mail and made decisions for himself. And I, quite frankly, would never have insulted him by suggesting him incapable of doing that. He worked a hard life and did a lot of working class jobs, and he was a very smart man. And I respect people's ability to read and ask questions. So we don't all have to agree that opt-out is the best strategy, but it is the strategy that the state of New York has chosen to use for these programs. And all of us at Rocktricity are happy to help folks think about what the decisions might be that are best for them. And they may save money by participating. For example, in the community solar program, it's a guaranteed savings. I don't know how anyone goes wrong with participating in that program. And I think you are super lucky. The Village of Brockport is leading the nation in this opportunity. There's no other community in the whole country where your mayor or supervisor is delivering a guaranteed savings on your utility bill through the use of community solar. I think that's something really tremendous to be proud of. And I admire the village's leadership on sustainability. All right, if there are no other questions, I think that we probably should say good night. So thank you all for attending, and we hope you have a good night.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Marie. Bye.